Have you heard of triple bottom line investing? And if you have a business that is actively addressing the world's greatest challenges, are you looking to raise capital, or are you an investor looking for opportunities that make a difference in areas like climate change, equality, sustainability, poverty, or justice? Every year, over $46.6 trillion is actively invested in Wall Street, but just 25% of that goes to investments that make a positive impact on the world. And the impact investing sector has seen a 38% growth rate increase since 2016. I'd like you to meet someone who helps impactful entrepreneurs scale and grow. His firm is Vanderbilt Financial Group. They have billions in assets under management, primarily focused on socially and environmentally responsible, ethical, and impactful investments. He's also a UN ambassador through EO, which is the Entrepreneurs Organization, with the United Nations, where he's able to advocate for entrepreneurs and connect entrepreneurship with the United Nations. And today he's going to discuss how entrepreneurs and investors are partnering to create a better world and how you can participate in this too. So thanks for being here, Steve. Nice to be here with you.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
All right. So I see you as the entrepreneur's entrepreneur, and that's after researching you, spending time with you, and just gathering the information for this interview today. So you've got a great story, which I think everyone's going to enjoy, but you've also become the go-to guy for impact capital. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the investment activities and why you're different from other venture capital people that other people may have heard about?
Well, you brought up triple bottom line so that we don't keep everybody in anticipation here. It's people, planet, and profit. So investing in a way that's not giving money to charity or philanthropy, not that there's anything wrong with that, but actually an entrepreneur and a business having a purpose and creating a good return. That's the essence of what we're looking to achieve when you have an evolved entrepreneur that's addressing an issue, a challenge, and they've created a profitable business model that can allow for the entrepreneur and the challenge to the entrepreneur to scale and grow, and for the challenge to either get eradicated or solved or so on. Hate to be so general, but there's so many challenges in the world, and I'm always looking through the lens of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. So this is my platform to be able to bring capital to impactful entrepreneurs to, again, help them scale and grow, but they need to be intentional about it and really invested in this in a meaningful way, like their life's mission. My life's mission is to have impact and alignment with what it is that I believe I was put on this planet for, and that is to help entrepreneurs.
And I love this whole idea. That's why this whole notion of being the entrepreneur's entrepreneur is so smart, because you're a market maker just as much as you're creating the demand and the opportunity at the same time. And you find very few people really thinking through that lens, especially from a long-term perspective as well. So I'm really impressed with, and again, one of the things that we're going to do is talk about a few case studies of some specific organizations, because if there's an entrepreneur watching this right now who's saying, well, what exactly are the qualifiers? How do I determine if I've got a right fit opportunity that can access capital like what you provide and generate? So let's talk a little bit about your background and how you got started in sustainable business in the first place, because you started out as an entrepreneur very, very young.
So yeah, my first business, Mike, was a business that is still sustainable. I was 6 years old. I had horse trails behind my house. And I'd take the wheelbarrow in the morning and roll it up there with my pitchfork. I'd put the horse manure in. I'd usually get 3 or 4 piles. It was a big deal for me because then I converted it into cash. I'd come down, and over the fence were my neighbors around us. And Miss Barker, who had like this English accent, would look up at me with her sparkly blue eyes and say to me, Stephen, you have, food for my plants. And she'd pull $1 out of her pocket and she'd hand it to me. She was ready for that. And, I'm introverted all my life. And as a kid, I was, and I found that business was my way of communicating, especially when I was doing good. She was so happy that her plants were growing. And I believed that I was part of that process. And, as I like to say, I've been selling shit ever since.
I love that. And who can refuse a 6-year-old with a wheelbarrow full of horse poop? I mean, I'm just imagining it right now. It's sort of like a kitten, a bunny, or the little boy with horse poop. But well, one of the things that you've done then, and we're going to talk about one of your projects specifically that involves trees, but you've put together a huge network that provides leverage with your financial investors. So you've got incredible reach, you've got access to capital, and the investors that you've pulled together are also interested in sustainability. So it's sort of like a triple win for a triple bottom line opportunity. And why don't you talk a little bit about your financial investors and that network, just so people have an idea of how strategic you think and how you've organized this. And then move on. Let's talk a little bit about sustainability.
Yeah, so from a financial services perspective, I've got a couple broker dealers and a couple RIAs. That's my makeup. And we have the highest concentration of impact investment advisors. So we've got a whole community of people that are very focused on having impact in the way they invest for their clients and having alignment with their values. And we found that to be a great opportunity, but it's very genuine. It's very much where I live. If you Google Tesla's biggest fan, you're going to find me, or Tesla's number one fan, because I love electric cars. If you look at my building that we have, our headquarters, it's a LEED Platinum office building, which is a really big deal because you had to do things very mindfully. It wasn't terribly expensive doing it different, but it was just a different state of mind. And investors nowadays are demanding more than your traditional, I want an allocation and a suitability and so on in a way that's not going to help me lose money, right? Everybody wants to make money when they invest, but they want more. They don't want to invest in things that are not in line with their investment objectives, but also their values. And as the transition happens from parents to children, people who are more mindful, a little bit more savvy of what's going on around them, they start to realize that the way you invest your money makes a difference. And you can empower companies to be able to do more meaningful things as an advocate for this sort of activity. And companies that haven't woken up to this are becoming dinosaurs.
Yeah, that's well, then that really gets to the fact that you're a mentor as well. So you get actively involved with these organizations. You find them, you vet them, and then you help them raise the money and build the relationships in the network to create more and more value. So why don't you talk a little bit about your own entrepreneurial roller coaster, a couple of failures you have had personally, and then we're going to get into what every impact owner in an entrepreneurial impact owner needs to have in order to attract investment as well. So it's sort of like a two-part question. Why don't you talk about any particular challenges that you've seen along the way or you've had?
Well, when we're talking about the challenges, there's a number of them. Again, I've had business to business, multiple businesses at the same time. And there's been so many of them, as a kid growing up, learning the disappointments that you can go through when you don't do something and you promise to deliver. Like, that's the accountability aspect. Probably my most successful business venture, and I know you said my failure, was when I had actually owned a limousine in my teens and I met my wife. I drove her to her prom, and I was a year older than her. We drove, I drove her, and her date got fresh with her, and we ended up sitting in the front seat of my car, just chatting the rest of the day or the rest of the night. And 6 months later, we were engaged at 18 years old. So, business has always served me super well.
Good story, sir. Good story, sir. That's a hero's journey.
There you go. Well, you know what? It's been wonderful. And funny thing is, I now have a very similar type vehicle. It's almost a limo. And my wife's like, my gosh, look, we're back to prom days again. So I've always liked being of service to people. And like you said, a hero's journey. But it doesn't always go so well. And so as you're growing the business, I've had lots of challenges from the perspective of, hitting the 2008 recession, where you had to quickly reduce staff and change the whole business model because business had dropped 40 to 50% almost overnight, and that didn't go away. Those things always stick with you as you're growing your business along the way. But those are the things that kind of resonate in your mind as you hit other challenges. So we just went through a pandemic. My immediate focus was on, do you have enough gas in the tank, savings, and so on. And we did, because we made this commitment. I never again wanted to go through the pain that 2008, 2009 put us through. Anybody that lived through that can remember it, because it was so painful. We didn't know where we were going. However, on the positive side, again, I'm always going to the positive side of things. What I've learned is during crisis, especially global crisis, it's a big open field for us as entrepreneurs. We can do whatever we want because there's no rules. Nobody's ever dealt with these things before. And so, again, pandemic opened up the floodgates for us to have opportunity. We just recently did a $200 million acquisition. We're doing more acquisitions. We're doing collaborations with other companies. So, when I look for the worst in things, they do trigger in my mind the pain that I went through. For example, hitting the Great Recession in 2008, 2009. However, I guess there's just something wrong with me in that I look at the opportunity, but that's who we are as entrepreneurs, right? It's not about having resources. It's about being resourceful, especially during challenging times.
That's great. So when you think about that, and I'll just repeat what I hear, it sounds like, first of all, just preparing for downtimes. It's like you never know when there's the metaphorical equivalent of a pandemic around the corner, having the resources and really having that mindset. And it's the problem with starting a business when there's a constant upcycle in the economy is you start thinking that things are always going to be that way. But let's talk a little bit about 3 to 5 things that an impactful business owner needs to incorporate to attract outside investment. So let's say there's someone who faces and serves the grand challenges that we talked about earlier that can make a difference. What do you look for that they need to have for you to say, yes, I will raise money for this. I'm going to bring my entire network of financial advisors who have capital at their fingertips through their clients and bring them into the family, so much so that you'll also mentor them.
Yeah. So when I'm looking at a company to see if they're in line with our strategy to raise capital, there's probably about 5 things I'm looking for. First and foremost, is this entrepreneur genuine? Is this their life's purpose? Is this their life's mission? Because when the going gets tough, I want to make sure that they're still going to be in it. Because if it is your life's mission, if they've got that visceral connection with that business, they're not going anywhere. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, are they a good leader? Or are they able to lead others in their business to fulfill their vision? Or are they a lone island and the rest of the business kind of functions, but they're not able to translate that into something scalable? So if they're able to do that, that's great. A viable business model. They must have a viable business model that makes sense. How are they going to make revenue? And what is it they're going to do to fulfill their purpose? That's the probably one of the more important things. But here's the really, really, really important thing, Mike, and it is culture. What is the culture? What are the values of that company? What do they hold dear and true to them? And are they willing to be vulnerable? Are they willing to be transparent about when challenges are going on so that we're on the same page and we can deal with them? I don't want to be surprised. So if there is a company that is not being transparent, they're surprising me with, oh, by the way, we got hit with a lawsuit 2 years ago and we thought it would go nowhere, but, now suddenly we're in this horrible situation. That's not good. So transparency is really, really important. So I'll spend lots of time with the company to look and feel what's going on around them, the way they work with in a collaborative way with their management team. That's really important to me. I want to see that they're working on, they're working together, rather than the big red S, Superman or Superwoman under the shirt for the entrepreneur. I want to see a team of collaborators that help them think things out. I've heard it said once, if not many times, nobody's as smart as everybody. And so a leader who listens to their team, works with their team in a meaningful way is super important to me as well. So smart people being able to be impactful, transparent, great culture, and a viable business model that is able to get scalable for the future is what I look for. And then we kind of dive in. Do we like each other? Because if I'm going to work with you, I need to know that I can reach out to you. I like you as a human being. And if you're, any of these 5 things, typically I'm going to like you if you meet all 5 of these criteria.
I love that. So I'm going to repeat the core ones just to make sure I've got this straight. So the first one is the entrepreneur genuine? Is this their life's purpose? Will they stick with this? Are they a good leader? And will they lead others to fulfill their vision? Or are they alone? And can they attract a right team? And can they work as a team? And then the viable business model that makes sense, makes revenue, and will fulfill the purpose. And then the culture and the values. And are they willing to be transparent and vulnerable? Can they attract a team of collaborators? And then the last big one is, do I like you as a human being? Is that correct?
I think the last one isn't a criteria, because if you met all 5, then the last one's a given.
Okay, good. And that is. So it's really a shared value system just as much as anything. And I think that's a huge takeaway for anyone here. And these are really quite soft. They're soft skills. They're not like something you have on a checklist and you've got like a rating scale that's easy to quantify. It really comes down to, this needs to be someone who's spent a lot of time thinking about the problem and has made it part of them, just like you've got your life's purpose and life's mission in helping sustainable entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's being very mindful about it. And, Mike, usually I find it to be an evolution of things. They were in this business and they evolved to this business. And it doesn't have to be a different business, but an evolution of that business. So that's what you see, is there's this realization for a company to really be very mindful of where they're going and how they're going to leave a legacy or their mark on the world with their business. Because otherwise, just sell your business and move on. What's the purpose? Or hang in there and just make your profit and do whatever you do. But these people, the people who we associate with, are looking for a much higher level of existence. And like you said so perfectly, which is, who are we looking to be a hero to? And we're looking for heroes.
Great. So why don't you talk a little bit about the fact that you're an UN ambassador through Entrepreneur Organization, and tie that into why impact investing is so important for the world right now. Let's go big picture.
Yes, so in 2015, the UN unveiled the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. It was this collaboration of 193 governments from 2012, but for about 3 years, 2011 to 2014, and they unveiled them in 2015. And it's 17 areas that their studies and their collaboration realize that there are some serious challenges out there in the world. And it gives us this lens of how to look at challenges and what's going on, because we can get real myopic sometimes and not realize what's going on around us. So I was working with the Entrepreneurs Organization, and I tripped over the UN, and it was 2017-ish. And I had said, hey, how would you like to have, the world's leading entrepreneurial organization to collaborate with? And the gentleman I was talking to, his name's Sergio Fernandez de Cordova. He's of Latino descent. He goes, dude, in 2015, when they came up with this sustainable development goals, multi-billion-dollar companies stepped up and said, we got this. He says, now it's 2017. And you know what happened? they realize that they can't turn the ship around that easily. They need entrepreneurs, people who got the heart to be able to really change their business models to make them impactful in a way that really ties to who the entrepreneur is. And we become better leaders in the process. So I've brought entrepreneurs, many of them to the UN, opened up the dialogues globally for entrepreneurs to be able to understand what the Sustainable Development Goals are, to understand what the world challenges are, and how do we tie it into our business models. And believe it or not, many businesses are already doing amazing things, and now they could identify it with it. They could identify with an SDG, a Sustainable Development Goal, and really be able to say, hey, by the way, we're solving, reduced inequalities because of our work in this particular space, or climate change, or whatever it might be. So it gave us a language in order to be able to talk, to be able to inspire others to greatness. Because when you find out the UN's involved with it, you start to realize that it's a much bigger world out there, and we have people just like us trying to make a difference, and entrepreneurs make a difference. How did we used to define entrepreneurs? Unemployable, right? We don't listen to the way other people tell us to do things, and we want to be able to use our businesses the way we want, make our own rules. But I believe an evolved entrepreneur is an artist. We use our businesses as our canvases. And I love to suggest that an entrepreneur look at the Sustainable Development Goals as beautiful colors, as their palette, to be able to paint a picture that's just beautiful in the world, and use their business as their legacy, as their, as something that we've left behind in a meaningful way that continues to grow and inspire others. So that's where I come from with the UN world. And we've brought many entrepreneurs through those halls, through this amazing place for them to learn from other countries, from one another, how to use our businesses for good.
Really good. So I think at this point, it would be smart to share a couple examples, because you're working with 3 particular companies right now that I'm aware of that you're doing this with. You've got Majora, World Tree, and True Colors, and you've also got a Shark Tank-like TV show that you're using as a platform. So let's start with some of the businesses you're working with, because I think having some clear examples are good, and we'll also make sure that we provide links to them so people can learn more about these opportunities as well, and see the examples and really understand how you've applied your filter and built a platform to help raise money as well and create awareness. So let's start with Majora, World Tree, and True Colors.
Yeah, so Majora Carter is an interesting story. She's in the Bronx, which is probably the least sexy part of New York City, one of the 5 boroughs. However, it suddenly became something when they started calling it Sobro, South Bronx, like the worst place on earth. And it's going through a transformation thanks to people like Majora Carter. Majora has a boogie down grind coffee shop, and it's a real happening hip kind of place. And she found herself in the post-pandemic, I guess we could call it, episode of her chapter, Does She Close It? Does She Raise Capital? And we actually did a podcast and a live interview and raised, I think it was $28,000 just from that one particular interview. And how did it all happen? It happened because I decided to create a documentary film called Igniting Impact. And that film is me storytelling about entrepreneurs doing amazing things. So Majora was one of our candidates, one of the people featured in this film. And so when I found out that she was having this crowdfunding challenge, overnight we were able to help her meet her goal and exceed it. And now she's doing some other meaningful real estate development in the Bronx, which we will be brought into the mix once she gets those things solidly done. But I can assure you it's got many zeros attached to it and will change and transform the way the Bronx is experienced. And what I mean by that is there's gentrification, where you just remove the guts of the community, and then you just inject money and Starbucks and so on. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Starbucks, but I'm just saying that that's the typical routine so that people can just feel super comfortable in a community that looks and smells exactly like them. And what Majora does is she keeps the culture, the people in the community, the people who are desirable, let's say, and meaning, you know, she said there have been challenges over the years, but she's looking not to erase what existed there, but to celebrate it through cultural centers, through homes that people can afford to stay in. And so her mission is to create the Boogie Down Grind as a center for the community to be able to come down, read, hear poetry, hear music, see art, and be able to experience great coffee. And they just got their liquor license, some drinks as well. So she's a great success story. And what I love about her, and you'll see her in the film, and if you wanted to see the film, you'd go to impactu.film, .film instead of .com. You'd see that she's just joyous. You'd see that she's just a happy person knowing that this is her life's mission. It's not made up. It's truly the essence of who this human being is. And just to finish on Majora, you know, Majora said, you know, it used to be that people would go to college and their life's mission was to leave the Bronx. And she's changed that to a certain degree because she's created an atmosphere that people can feel at home and comfortable and inspired within their own community, not just to escape from it. So I love the Majora Carter story. Thank you for asking me about that one.
Yeah, that's what I like about that one in particular is, again, you've built a platform. The fact that you've created a documentary film, that's a dream come true for a startup, for a business owner, someone who's doing something like this, and for you to tell a bigger story and incorporating all those. And it just goes to show there's a visionary marketing and storytelling process at work here above and beyond what is normal. And again, that's why you are the entrepreneur's entrepreneur, thinking through that lens.
So True Colors is a microbrewery down in Wilmington, North Carolina. And I was brought to them by a person who is a sort of consultant to them. And their story is they help gang members to not leave the gang, stay in the gangs, and work with other gang members through a thing as simple as beer. And George Taylor, who's the entrepreneur, tells the story of how he witnessed a young person in their teens, I think it was 15 or 16, get shot right in front of him. And he called the DA, who he happened to know, and said, "What the heck is that?" And he said, "Oh, that's gang activity." He says it was a gang beef and they shot one another. He goes, "We have gangs?" He goes, "Yeah, we have multiple gangs around here, of course." And he said, "I want to meet the head gang people and talk to them about what's going on." And he did. And what ended up happening was he said, "Listen, I have an offer for you. I've raised capital for a number of businesses successfully. I'm willing to include you in the equity of this business, but here's the two conditions. You need to be willing to work with rival gang members at the brewery, and you need to stay in the gang. And from the inside out, influencing the gang life in such a way that they reduced gang violence by over 90% in Wilmington, North Carolina." It was amazing. They also have a bonus program, which is incredible, which is if there's a shot fired in the community, their bonus goes down by 25%. If there is somebody shot, their bonus goes down by 50%. If there is a person killed in the community, they actually have money deducted from their paycheck to pay for the funeral of that person. So guess what? Everybody's got a real interest in keeping things nice and quiet on the streets, because the moment they hear something, it hits them in the pocket and their mission is sort of blown. So it's a very interesting, he is definitely an alternatively minded entrepreneur. In order to get things done, he does things very uniquely. He actually created a book, which was the Heroin Dealer's Handbook. And he talked about, by doing certain things with the heroin, believe it or not, fentanyl, I think it was, they cut it with fentanyl, and that's what kills people. You are killing your your client and the cost of client acquisition. And like, talk about alternative thinking, but that's what he does. And it was successful. It actually worked. So George is just a very inspiring, different kind of person. Now he's currently raising money to expand their distribution. I know they're in collaboration with Budweiser. So they're doing some big things in the world. And the UN loves hearing their story to, end violence. Gang violence internationally is a challenge. So when they're able to have that story told internationally, I personally am coaching some of the gang members that allow me to help them from an entrepreneurial perspective. Because I got to be honest, the gang mentality lends itself very well to entrepreneurship, hustling, getting out there and doing things and being your own boss and being able to protect yourself and being able to think ahead. And although it may be in different circumstances, they are very entrepreneurial. So I really like that story. And again, they're covered in our film, Igniting Impact, just really great. So you get to hear from some of the gang members about, how they're working inside this business to change the violence in the streets in a meaningful way. Creating great fathers, by the way. These are really great gentlemen to be fathers now, and they have families and they stick with their families. They bring them away to Disney when they're allowed to go to Disney. And I don't mean that from a parole perspective. I mean that from a pandemic perspective right now. But they're just incredible people who have transformed themselves as well as others in that journey.
Once again, it's a dream come true for someone who's building something like that. It's an unusual investment, unusual opportunity. And the fact that they've been able to incorporate so many of these values in addition to creating a viable business that makes money too is it's pretty extraordinary. So let's move on to World Tree. I know that's one of your big passion projects for a lot of reasons, and it's a genius business model. So let's dive into that one.
Yeah, again, these businesses, World Tree, for example, are not new businesses. They're differently engineered businesses as a result of challenges, failures, opportunities, right? So what does World Tree do? World Tree plants the world's fastest growing trees. They're non-invasive. They're not bamboo. And these trees grow to full size in typically 10 years. So 10 years, meaning 8 to 12 years they're at this peak, and then they get harvested. But here's the magic. Wendy Burton, who is the founder and chairperson of World Tree, was selling these trees to farmers, and they couldn't afford them, and they couldn't really figure out how to grow them properly. And World Tree knows this particular tree really well. It's called the Paulownia tree, and it's an Empress Splendor, the genome that they work with. And Wendy figured out that if she could raise the capital to help the farmers put those trees in the ground, she'd have a win-win-win. And let me share with you how. An investor puts money in, and it doesn't need to be somebody mega wealthy. They could be non-accredited. They put $3,000 in. The tree grows to full size. And at the end of that, let's say the harvest of that 1 acre is worth, let's say 120, 100,000, whatever the number is. There's a multiple here that they've experienced before. The farmer gets half the yield. So in those examples, at 100,000, the farmer would get $50,000, and then World Tree would split with the client 25 and 25, or, take the other multiples and average them out. And what they decided to do with World Tree was to make the farmer the people they were looking to be heroes to, not just the client. And the farmer gets to have the yield of subsequent growths of these trees. Because when you cut them down, they will grow back 6 more times from the stump, and they just need to maintain them. The farmer gets all of that. The client who invests in this gets the satisfaction of knowing that they've erased their carbon footprint for a family of 4 by doing an investment in 1 acre, And plus they get a nice return. on their money. And so it's like this win, win, win. And when I met Wendy Burton, I knew that this was her life's purpose. She told me a story about when she was 8 years old and she heard the trees crying. Maybe she's got a sixth sense that allows her to hear trees crying. I don't know. But she was watching trees go by and her mother had said to her, those trees are dead. There's nothing really alive about them. She goes, no, they're still alive. I can see they're still alive. And when you hear a story like that, you know that person is all in and they're going to do everything they can to make that happen. So what happened when I first met them? That was probably 2 years ago. It was kind of a mom and pop. And they were starting the business and doing their thing. And since they've installed so many safeguards, so many different things inside the business, that gave me great comfort in being able to raise capital for them. And what ended up happening also is my financial advisors, who are representing and sharing the opportunity, are seeing that people are very interested. I mean, what's more top of mind right now than climate change for people? You see all sorts of crazy things that are going on in the earth. And the question is that climate change? Well, I don't know, but I do know that if I could take my money, which I have done, and invest it in a way that'll help be part of the solution versus part of the challenge, well, guess what? I'm good with that. And that's exactly where we went with World Tree, because they are so mission oriented. Everybody over there, I sometimes scratch my head. So do they have to pay these people to work for them, or do they just volunteer to pay for them? Because when you come up with a mission that's bigger than yourself, that's global, that means that there's going to be, farmers and environment and so on. It's not that difficult to get people to be part of that vision. They want to follow that and be part of, being a hero to many through that process. So I think it's just really neat. And again, a great evolution of things. All of these people have been business owners, but they've evolved over the years. So sure, you could maybe hit it right doing it all at once. Like I'm going to do this mission-oriented company and we do it exactly this way. We all know what entrepreneurship's like. It's like going in a sailboat. You're tacking. You don't go from point A to point B. The wind changes. So you're going to need to change the way of your business, the direction of your business based upon the conditions of the sea, the wind, and so on.
Right. Which brings us to the next one. You've done the documentary film. You've incorporated these businesses in them. So part of your strategy is storytelling and stacking them and building a case for a movement, not just a single organization. Why don't you talk about the show that you're working on that's kind of like Shark Tank?
Yeah, so putting together a documentary film was just for me to be able to tell those stories and to inspire others. But beyond that, film, by the way, is, the new book for entrepreneurs as far as I'm concerned, for us to be able to really have an immersive experience in a topic, to learn quickly and understand it. And by the way, for World Tree, I'm just about to finish up a virtual reality film footage for people to be able to really understand it in a very short period of time in a 360 mode. So a whole different way, and nobody in the financial services industry is doing this, creating a documentary, doing virtual reality. But then in a Shark Tank style of being able for people to raise capital, we put together a number of entrepreneurs from different business models and create a what we call a global entrepreneurship challenge, where they're able to present the solution and be able to present their business if it fits into that criteria. Often we'll do a virtual film viewing of the Igniting Impact, and then we'll talk to the entrepreneur about what they're doing. And in Majora's case, we did crowdfunding as her source for funding. We also get feedback from the people who are watching to hear what their thoughts are on the business, and for them to get really valuable international feedback from people who you'd never have an opportunity to be in touch with. And then we consider them for a capital raise. And then we look at them and say, okay, is this the type of business that we would want to raise capital for? And if it is, next step, we're going to do a video clip. We're going to do a documentary style clip for them and then add to it the virtual reality. And why is virtual reality important? Because it really allows a person to fully understand what a company's doing in a very short way. It's my short 3 to 5 minutes. We have an attention span for you to be able to really understand it, not have to sit through 20 or 30 minutes of film footage and really get to know if you want to be part of this. So it's just a neat journey for me to be able to continue to rise up in my organization as the founder and chairman, and be really impactful with the way we educate people, share stories, and allow them or offer them opportunities to be able to invest in a way that's congruent with their passions and values. That's the mission for me, for people to get things that they couldn't get anywhere else in a very unique way. And so it's happening, and it's a fun journey.
Really good. So, why don't you go through the way how you think of operating with investors, entrepreneurs in the financial services industry, because those are sort of the bridge points that all of this is for. And through your storytelling, through how you're effectively marketing and packaging these opportunities. Can you just go through that, so someone who either is an investor or an entrepreneur, an impact-oriented entrepreneur who fits the value system, or someone in financial services who wants to partner with you, what does that look like?
Well, first we're going to tell their story, right? So what is their story? Why is this part of their existence? And then we're going to vet it for who are we going to offer this to? Is it going to be accredited investors, sophisticated people who have more means, or is it going to be for people who are non-accredited, just average, everyday investors? There's a couple of different varieties of investment nowadays when you're going through these private placements, as we call them. There's the Reg D, and there's a couple of varieties of that. And those are for accredited investors, people who have more money. And what those end up doing is there is not as much transparency as other investment opportunities. So it's not my preferred means, and it's limited. People who love the company are not really able to invest sometimes because they're not accredited. So there's a Reg D style. But the beautiful thing that came out of the Jobs Act many years ago was a thing called a Reg A or a Reg A plus. And those are investment opportunities that have behind them certified audited financials. So the audited financials are there. So you have a third party that's able to, be able to create the financial picture, or at least verify to a certain degree that the company is doing what they say they're going to be doing. And then, we look at the structure. What's the structure going to look like? Are we going to have income? Is it going to just be appreciation? That sort of thing. And then try to mix it and bring it all together in a way that's very attractive to a client who has a certain mission and purpose. So in the case of WorldTree, people who invest in WorldTree end up getting a tax write-off in the first couple of years. And that's pretty attractive to people, because if you're investing, let's say it's $3,000 or $5,000, sometimes 20, 30, 40, 50% of that money would have been paid in taxes. And this gives you a write-off. So that's a nice thing. And then what are the long and short-term plans of that entrepreneur? What do they need? What are their capital needs today? And are we able to achieve that going forward? What's the next plan? People want to know about liquidity, right? So how do I get out of this investment? What do I do? People want to know about income. So these are all conversations we have, and sometimes they're achievable and sometimes they're not. But that's all part of the conversation with the entrepreneur. Are they willing to go there with certain investments? And when I say go there, let's talk about, a Reg A offering. Reg A can be done with a firm like mine because we have the audience, we have the assets. You can also do it in crowdfunding, where they get discovered amongst thousands or hundreds of thousands of other crowdfunding raises as well. And how do you get your message across? How do you get people's attention? We're able to get that. we're able to align people's values with their investments and say, hey, I just came across this investment opportunity. I think you should take a look at it. Maybe put some money in for your grandchild or child's college education. And then when they're, they hit school age, they'll have this amount of money that's coming out. So there's setups for the opportunity based upon what the needs are of the entrepreneur. Do the clients align with it? And I interview my financial advisors also. And I say, this is the deal I'm looking at. What do you think? And again, it's not overnight. It'll take a little while to make sure it's all done right. But I want to make sure I set the stage so we'll have a successful capital raise, and that I won't have to, worry about not having enough money raised as a result of that investment being set up wrong. So I'll consult with my financial advisors. We also are working on some artificial intelligence for our set of clients to be able to fully understand what it is that they really want. And then I'll keep my eye out for those sort of opportunities as well.
I love that. So the bottom line is, if you're an investor, entrepreneur, or in financial services, first of all, I think it'd be smart to check out the ImpactU .film website, check out the documentary, but also reach out to you would you like to send people to your personal website?
Sure, stevedistante.com. I guess we'll post that, Steve Distant with an E on the end.com is my personal website. And it's got links to many of the different things that we're talking about here on this interview.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank you, Steve. This has been really, I learned even more about you and what's going on in this interview today. And I'm really glad we got to go through, how to position yourself if you're an entrepreneur looking to raise money, and how to pass the values. That's really an important aspect of this. And the rest is up for you, viewer, listener, reader. Check out Steve's sites. Check out that documentary. Learn more about what he's doing, how he's doing it, and also the power of the crowdfunding strategy. The fact that you're registered, you're able to put together unique financial vehicles to make these happen is also a powerful, powerful strategy. So thank you very much, Steve.
My pleasure. I'm excited to be part of the entrepreneurial journey for many. So this is a dream come true for me.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.